Ho, ho, ho! And yes, Christmas time is upon us once again. Last year, you probably saw me make the little bitty chairs, Christmas in Heaven poems. This year, I've got another fun project, and it should be easy enough where a lot of you guys could probably even do it in your own homes with very basic tools. So let's get started and I'll show you what we're doing. Today's project is what I like to call a spiral tree. Now, I've made a few of these before, and they've all turned out pretty good, but I've always kind of wanted to do a bit of a more deluxe version. The big issue with them is you have to space them all out and kind of stagger them and to make that nice spiral. What we have on the bench right now is actually one of the very first ones I ever did. I tried to put like little bitty notches in them. It actually worked really well. As you can see, these three right here are nicely firm together. So it'd be cool to have it work all the way up. So I think I figured out a way to do that better. A lot of the stuff you actually see me do on this channel, not just this Christmas project, are done with scrap woods, because I always have a lot of extra scrap. For the star, I've got this piece of poplar, and I'm going to take a nice big slice out of this walnut, and we're going to make that for the base. I'm going to go the deluxe route. But say you do not have a fancy wood shop like I do. What do you do? What do you need? Well, you're going to need a drill. And you're going to need a couple of drill bits. You can go buy rod at the store. You can buy 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch stock at the store as well. The problem you might have finding is a block of wood for your star, but you could always get a rosette block. You know, they're square and they got the little rosette thing in the middle, and you could always make the star out of that. The base, on the other hand, you can make it out of this 1/4 inch stock, but you're going to need to glue pieces together, and there is a way to do this, and I can kind of show you how to do that. One dowel rod will probably be more than enough of what you would need. As far as diameter goes, I would say 3/8 is a good diameter. I wouldn't go bigger than 3/8 because again, you got to put a 3/8 hole in the center of one of these. So if you go too big, it's not going to leave a lot of meat on the end. If you go too skinny, you risk breaking this. As far as height goes, you can make it really as tall as you want. You can make it as wide as you want. This is measuring about 10 inches on the width, and it's about 16 inches tall when you include the base and the star. There are approximately 50 in this entire run. So figure you're going to need about 25 of these in around 12 inches to make this work. Now I recommend though you go bigger because once everything is all stacked together and put in with the dowel rod, you could take it along the saw and cut a nice clean edge on it when it's all put together. Now I hope you're able to understand that and kind of give you the idea of the spacing. Hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about the further we go along here. Now I'm going to reuse this, even though I'm not really happy with how my little peg system worked. I'm going to eventually cut these off, so I'm only going to need to make probably another 10 of these. Okay, now that the pieces are cut, we're going to put this one aside for right now, and these can all get sanded. If you have a wood shop, it is obviously easier, but if you don't, you're going to take your pieces, and you can literally, because they're so skinny, you can just take your handsaw and cut them. Now I have a chop saw, so I'm going to just start by cutting a lot of these pieces up a little bit longer than the base, because again, we're going to add probably about another 10 to these, because we're going to not need the 10 on top. Now, the hardest part is going to be to drill the hole. But I'm going to show you a cool little trick that whether you're doing it with a full shop or DIY, all you need is a drill and some of these pieces of scrap and 2 screws. And you can make this happen. Okay, getting the holes centered, the best way to do that is with a small centering jig. Now you can buy one, but I'm going to show you how to make one with these 2 sticks and 2 screws and a drill. I'm going to recommend, though, you got to use 2 drill bits. So I'm going to go with one that's a hair smaller than the other. This dimension doesn't actually matter, and you're going to see why in a little bit here. Drill through both. Now I'm going to unchuck the drill and leave the drill bit in there. Then I'm going to take the next drill bit, drill through both. Okay, once you're through both, spin this one around and drill through that. Then remove it. You should have 3 holes. Put your screws into the holes. The key with the screws are you need to have the screws be the same. There it is. You could take your piece, line it up like so, and I kind of think that's around center, and drill your hole. But you could do this easily without a drill press, and it gives you a nice accurate gauge every single time. Let me finish doing the rest of these, and then we're going to ream them out to the 3/8 of an inch. If you're doing them individual by hand, cutting these and then centering up each piece by hand, well, you're going to have to make sure that they're laid out, spaced out properly. And then you can just start stacking them into your rod. So your stack, if you're doing it, should kind of look like that all the way up. But again, we're going to trim this. We're basically going to take a slice to remove all this on the table saw. But I need to make a jig for this whole thing to sit into so we can run it safely through the saw. I would have loved to have had a larger piece of plywood to do this, but I can't find anything. So I'm using this. Just kind of line it up, get it to an angle that you like, and just go with that. Okay, so I've got 2 blocks for the bottom, and then I got 2 blocks for the top. I already have my marks here. I'm just going to start with the very first one. Get that guy in there. And then I'm going to take the whole tree using the stem as a gauge to kind of hold it square and tight. I'll put the other piece in. Now the same thing for the top. I'm going to give it as much compression as I possibly can here. And this one I'm doing up and down just because it's going to give me a little bit more nailing. And again, I'm going to do another one on the other side as well. This way it keeps pressure on it and it kind of holds it down. Now something else I'm going to do, because this can become a sketchy cut, I'm going to take another piece and I'm going to put it over the top to kind of sandwich it. And there we go. And it's nice, it's firm, and I can definitely make that cut. Just remove those screws, take your thing, try to keep it together, put it back in your little jig here, screw this plate back in. Now this piece of wood is here because obviously I didn't have a wide enough piece of plywood. If I had a wide enough piece of plywood I wouldn't need this, but because it is what it is, it'll hang over and I can use this as just an extra kind of a fence. But you can see it's just going to line up real nice with the blade. Let's give this a slice. Now for most of you, this could be pretty much done. Give it a sand. You don't even need to sand it if you don't want. All you'd have to do is now make your base, make your star, and you're pretty much done. But again, I want to do a deluxe version in a way. Now, to make my deluxe version work, I need to put it back in the jig. But before I go and do that, I need to take every other one and flip it upside down. All right, so you see, I changed my block to a little bit thinner. It's going to be a little bit safer for me. I got the saw set at a 10-degree angle going this way, and I choked it up a little bit. So it should put an angle on each one. I did sandwich it again like I did before because it's just going to hold it tighter. All right, now just to kind of explain to you what we're doing here. We already cut an angle on both sides. Okay, now we're going to cut an angled groove on one side that's going to be a little extra wide. And on the other side, it's going to be a skinny piece. And then this is where we're going to put the piece of wood at to make the peg. This is going to be the relief. Okay, now that the cuts are made, flip all your pieces, every other one, back around. Now originally you saw I cut each piece on a 10-degree angle, and I did the one on one side, and then I kind of matched the other on the other side. That originally did not give me what I wanted. So really I had to cut them in kind of a trapezoidal shape, which is kind of what you can see now. You've got the tapers going this way, both sides. Obviously, too, let's get you in here with the camera. You can see they're all staggered. So you've got a skinny, thick, all the way up. It looks exactly the same on the opposite side. Now, I'm going to show you why I did these angles. You don't need to do them. It's just another part of my deluxe model that I've been kind of coming up with here. Now the hard part is going to be gluing in the peg. So I have this piece that I had basically was sitting on the floor with the rest of the garbage. It just needed a little shaving, and it's going to get wedged into the tighter section. The thing is, though, I want it to be glued into the one section, but not to the other section. So that's going to be a bit of a trick. I might have to tape it. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, but this took me a bit of time to set up. And what it does, though, is it gives this equal spacing where I can dab some glue in here and I can slob it in there and not have to worry about All right, so I have my Ginsu saw, and I basically started slicing every single one of these. And I did have some issues with these, but I was able to kind of glue some chunks back in. I may have made this a little too thick in this area, and it kind of messed some stuff up. Everything can be reworked. So now I'm just going to kind of go through with the Ginsu saw here, and I got to cut them all free. Okay, now that I'm at the last one, I've realized that I need a new Ginsu saw. All right, so now that they're all cut free, I have got to get them staggered, which is gonna take a little bit of time here. Okay, so everything, I was able to get it flattened out. I'm not gonna lie to you, there was a couple of them that I actually did have to go through and file, but I will say 90% of them worked out just fine. I got the little clamp up here just to kind of keep it together. Again, being the deluxe version, and this is kind of experiment number 2 on how to do this, I think it worked out pretty well. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this ridge, flush it out. Okay, so a couple Band-Aids, threw a little chunk in there, added a little chunk to here. It's a big chunk, but it could all be sanded down. So while this is drying, I'm going to go to the dowel rod. Now, because I'm not going to reuse this dowel rod or even the other dowel rod because I believe it's too small. So I got to make a new one. So let me show you how that gets done using a very easy jig. So this is my dowel jig, and yeah, it's pretty basic, but it's pretty simple as well. You basically have a hole that is about 3/8 of an inch of a hole here, and you have a larger end for the stock. Now, I usually cut a piece about 5/8 by 5/8, and it sticks right into the hole. I take the other end of the stick, and I put a screw in here, a headless screw that is, and I use that for my drill. And the drill will spin it. Well, you're going to see it here in a second. I usually put this here, and then I start raising up the blade. Now, I want the blade to kind of ramp up. So when I'm feeding the wood in, it's going to start cutting the wood once it starts getting to here. And then as it goes through, the tip of the blade will start to shave it. And remember, this thing is going to be spinning. And then it should come out the other side round. These are here so I can clamp the board to the fence. That keeps it nice and tight from, obviously pushing sideways. All right, so I'll drill the end, try to keep it in the center. Then I chuck a headless screw into the drill, and because they are drywall head screws, they remove pretty easy. They just snap. And get it all set up, and make sure it's super tight. This is gonna go into the hole, and I'm gonna start turning the drill. And I'm gonna slowly creep up on the blade a little bit till I get the output of 3/8 towards the back end. And unfortunately, it is still a little tight, but let me show you a cool little trick of how you can adjust it, and even kind of make this a little bit more even. So what you got is your slot for your slide fence. Now, I got about 6 layers of tape in here, and this is only about 3/8 of an inch deep. Now, we need to be a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch because obviously we want this thing to spin and rotate. So I'll take my sanding block, and I'll just start using it. And it should micronly shave it down. All right, so now that the dowel rod is long enough and it's finished to the dimension, we've got the star and the base to do next. Now we're going to save the base for last because honestly this is one of my favorite parts of the project, and you'll see why. So laying out the star, I could just take this and trace it upon there, which would be fine, but I'm going to show you, you could just organically lay it out. You definitely want the bottom of your piece to be flat because once you drill your hole and you attach everything, you're going to glue this top piece in, and at the very bottom, you're going to have the other piece glued in. That's going to hold all the strips together, the glue. So you definitely want to keep this bottom flat. And again, it really doesn't matter how you mark it. It really matters more or less how it gets cut. But yeah, for the most part, I think that's pretty good. Now, the other thing too is this piece, you can see I did a notch. Now I'm going to end up doing that again too with chisels. If you don't have chisels, or if you're doing this by yourself without a lot of proper tools, you can always just draw some lines, paint this part black, and then leave the star, a gold or a yellow color. Eventually, when we get into painting this, you'll see. The other thing too is you can just cut this with a handsaw. So you don't need anything fancy. You're already going to have a drill for your drill bit, so you're in good shape there. Putting it up to the piece, width-wise, we are absolutely spot on with the dimension here. So yeah, it's not actually in bad shape at all. Let me try to chip out the center here. Again, I'm just going to kind of go with my knife first. Kind of give it some score. I almost want to just, I don't want to go too deep with it, but maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. You don't want to go too deep because obviously you still have to drill your center hole. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put the hole in first. All right, so the hole's drilled. Rod fits in there perfectly. It's nicely equal. Let's start chipping this out. And we've already broke it. Now, if you're wondering if I'm still going to use the same piece that I just cracked, you're absolutely correct. Because I just glued it back together. The break was clean. And what's to say that I'm not going to break a new one that I made. Not to mention, I kind of like the way the star looks, so we're going to go with it. And it's just going to need some sanding after it fully dries, which it is not yet. And now we're ready to make the stand. And as I said before, this is probably the fun part of the project because obviously you want it to sit flat. Once this thing is all closed up, you want this to lay flat for storage. I mean, you could make this to where it's a plus and stays like that, but then that kind of defeats the whole point of having it stored. So you can make one of these. Now, what's cool about this is this actually was one solid piece of block, and I went through and cut out of the inside and made it to do this kind of scissor function, which is what we're going to do with this walnut. But if you do not want to mess around with this or even think you can even do something like this, here's a couple other options for you. Now, if you only have 1/4 inch stock that you've been using for the strips, you could take two pieces, glue them together, and make kind of like a bridge with a couple little feet, and then do that, and then that would also work. The other thing too is if you had a block of wood left over because you started with say a 1x4 or a 1x6, you can do this with it. You could cut out a circle. It doesn't even have to be a circle. It could be a trapezoid shape, whatever. Do the same thing with the top. The top piece makes the bridge. The bottom piece makes the thing, and obviously I didn't cut this out, but you can turn this 90 degrees. The key to all of these are you want the pivot point, this point, and even this point to stay tight, because obviously you don't want it to rock around, and with the bottom going to be glued into your thread, your rod, you want this section, the upper section of each one of these is going to be the rotating factor. So again, let me show you how to make this, because again, this is pretty cool. Okay, so I went through, I drilled a 3/8 hole for the dowel rod to fit through, and then I started doing some marks. I didn't actually use my little marking block because, I like to freehand stuff. So that's kind of how I did it. Now, the other thing too is the first thing you got to lay out after you get all this stuff done is obviously the hole is going to be where, the hole you drilled is going to be where the center is. So I was able to find this piece of electrical tape, and this is going to give me some of the curves. Now, yeah, I didn't freehand the circles, but that's all right. So we're going to do one on top. We're going to do one on the bottom. Now, after the circles are done, I kind of scribbled out the sides for the scissor system. So you got this one. It's going to make kind of a line. And then obviously it's the same corresponding side. Now we are going to split this in half like so, both sides. And then we are going to sneak up on here. Now what we also have to do is we have to make these little clearances on these pieces. On the opposing pieces need the clearance. So what we're going to end up doing is, we know this is all going to be whole, so let's keep that together, and then we'll keep this guy together. And then we know this is independent. Now, if we were to flip it upside down here, too, you can kind of see how that works out. We are going to need to clearance a straight section here, and then it's going to be the opposite side. Now I'm going to do a lot of this on the bandsaw, but I will show you how you can actually split this. Okay, with all the pieces, now you did see I ran the piece on a bit of an angle to kind of get that kerf started. So now we're going to do the center split. And I am going to use a drill bit just to kind of show you how you can actually do this without having a fancy oscillating saw, which I do have and I could use. We're going to start with, I'm just going to score a line between the two. Now, if I kept scoring and scoring and scoring, I'd eventually cut through this without a problem. But again, I just kind of want to show you that you don't need that. So we're going to just kind of keep running the drill bit in here and kind of drill out a line. Now, the score mark also helps line up the bit. And you don't want to break your drill bit like I just did. Now, yes, you did see me break the drill bit, and it's kind of still in there. But let me just show you another way then to get the rest of the stuff clean. Now, I recommend safety goggles when you do this, and you don't tap on your knife too much. But the actual knife blade, I mean, it can shatter, and you can break your knife as well. But this, you just got to keep taking small bites, and you'll eventually get it to split. Now, if you were just watching, and I hope you still are, you would have seen that, yeah, I screwed it up and I broke the pieces. Okay? They're clean breaks, and I'm just going to glue them again. And don't feel ashamed if you have to do the same to your project, because it's not the end of the world. The glue is going to make a stronger joint than this anyway. Behold the power of glue. Yes, glue sticks a lot of crap together. And both of them were glued, and they're solid. Watch them break. No, they're good. And then I kind of did already one. You can see I kind of flattened this guy out, and this one still needs flattening. Now let me show you what I did here to actually make that happen. And you can kind of see what we got going on here. This is just a flat piece of plywood that I had laying around. I cut a couple of grooves into it, and it wraps the sandpaper. That'll give you a gauge. It basically makes a gauge block now that'll allow you to sand to a certain depth. So we're going to do the same with the other side. And you can see, well, it's a little high right now. But watch what I do, and I'll be able to flatten this guy out, and it should be equal to the other side. So now obviously you have a offset though, because you can see these are protruding. So what can you do? Well, you can either just shave off the one side, because the other side's going to eventually get somewhat of a taper on it, and I'm going to eventually cut that, and we're going to do that on both of them. But what about for the center? And again, like I say, you could just shave off the feet on two sides. You're going to cut the top, so that's going to work out. Or you can actually just add another block of wood in between the two, glue this guy in. The guy had it cut to fit that way, and it makes it a lot closer, a lot less sanding, and two, it kind of gives it a kind of a fun little detail in the middle as well that you won't really see a lot of, especially too when it's in the open. We're going to curve these, so you're going to just see a little bit of it. It doesn't look bad, and honestly, I think I'm going to do that route. But this being pine, I want to go with some oak. So let me cut up a little chunk of oak for this. All right, I didn't have one block, but I did have two blocks. So each piece got a block. They're glued. I sanded both sides flush. We're just going to let them sit in the vise here, because that makes a great clamp. Now, with that still being needed to be shaped, we could start talking about some of the painting that's going to need to be done. Now, obviously, you could paint these and finish these in any way you want. I mean, you can run like a Danish oil on them, leave them natural finished. It's up to you. Do what you want. I want it green. I want the base brown. And then I want the star gold. So that's what we're going to do. And I might actually try to make, I said make this black. Actually, make it green. It'll make the peak of the tree even nicer. All right, now that the glue is dry, I put a little peg in there just to kind of hold it together. It's kind of clamped. I got the bottom in the vise. Now you can see I already did some shaving with the bandsaw to kind of make the arc. Now I'm just going to follow it up with some files and kind of clean it up. And then let's see if it does the rotation the way it's supposed to. All right, so I did go through. I gave it some sanding. I sanded the bottom on my fancy sander, sanded the sides. You're going to need to do some sanding. I'm not going to lie to you. You're going to have to kind of shape these and try to make them look good. You're going to keep playing with them as much as possible to get them to do what they need to do. But as you can see, it works out really good. And remember, these were the ones that broke. We're going to do the arcs now. That's going to get roughed on the bandsaw first, and then I'm just going to clean them up with the belt sander thingy I have. Here it is. And again, it's kind of a pain. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's quite fun to do. It just takes a little time. I enjoy doing the handwork and some of the freehand work as well. So, I enjoy it. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's a pretty neat looking joint, and it works really cool, and it's going to do exactly what we want it to do. Again, you don't have to do this. There are other options, and this I would consider maybe advanced level, but it's still very doable. And again, sanding, filing, sawing can make it happen. Looking into the paint booth, basically, I just want to show you. I unfortunately thought this was gold, but it's not. It's silver, so silver it is. I have this little sparkle stuff that I'm going to add to it later, so it'll be silver with a little sparkly gold in it. I went through too. I got these kind of just sealed up right now. There's the star. I did tape off the bottom because I'm going to hit that in some of that green. And this is still, it's got an A coat on it, but it needs a couple more. And we're just going to keep going with that until while all the sanding's being done on these strips. Okay, so the other pieces are put aside, and I'm back here in the little paint area, and you can see I got all my little trees set up. And then I took some concrete dye and I mixed it with sealer, and kind of got this green color. Hopefully it's going to work out pretty good. I'm not going to actually show you spraying this because I don't want to get it everywhere. It's going to get everywhere, but we'll show you how it looks like when it's finished. Now, if you've ever spent a little time watching me on this channel, you understand that I do experiment with some stuff. And it's still pretty wet. I just finished spraying it, but the concrete dye worked unbelievably good. I can't even put it into words how awesome it looks. You can still see some of the black specks too, because I had to add a little black to kind of darken it up. I mean, obviously I made a mess, which I knew I was going to do, but wow, I cannot wait to see how this dries, because those little black specks kind of give it a little bit more texture and detail, and yeah, that's really kind of cool. I'm actually glad I tried to do that. First time ever putting sealer, concrete dye. I guess you could use almost any kind of dye. Mixed the shit out of it, and sprayed it. Yes, I made an absolute mess, green mess, in the workshop. Looks like I killed the Hulk or something. But the proof is in the pudding. Because look at how these turned out. Will it actually focus? There you go. Now, unfortunately, I did get some drip edges, and some of the bottoms are a little dark, but that's all right. Because, obviously there's a lot of darkness in a regular old Christmas tree. So it's not the end of the world. I did actually start doing a little bit of stack, and you can kind of see, they hold up against each other. When you move one, they all move, which is what I did. Now, the angles, too, I probably could have made these angles a little bit deeper. Or, like I say, I think I did these at, 15 degrees or 10 degrees? I probably could have went and did these at 20 degrees and would have made this V. This is supposed to be somewhat of a V, and then there's a peak. V, peak, V, peak. Kind of goes, once it goes up. The star got the sparkle job, and I put some clear. You can obviously see the green underneath, which worked out. And the base turned out really good. You can see it's the same piece of wood. Grains match, and it does the scissor action like it's supposed to. It's hard to do with one hand, but there you go. Now, it's time to assemble everything. And I just kind of threw them there just to see what it is, but here is the threaded rod, or the dowel rod that we made. We're going to glue this into the base, and then we're going to start stacking. Now, the bottom one is the one that gets glued in. The top one does not get glued in, and make sure you don't get any glue into the top one. So I'm going to actually feed the glue from the bottom side. That way, hopefully, it won't spread to the top side. And I'm probably going to actually just let this dry before I start adding more to it. And I did toss a little bit of wax here. Drop this panel on here. I am going to kind of give this a little bit of a wax job as well. That way it'll help these guys rotate a little bit. You can always reach for your ear, or I've actually had this wax for a while. But yeah, a little bit of wax here on this rod. Insert your jokes here if you'd like. Okay, with them all being popped in, let's make sure it closes. Okay, so now that you've organized your stack, and again, I had to do the organization because all the cams, I needed them to line up and obviously lay flat. So I put it on a board here. That way it holds this guy flat. And we got the top flat. So we're good. So now we can add the star. So I'm going to measure the depth of the hole and then kind of glue it on and hold it straight into the thing. Then we're going to just let it dry up. But you can see the color. I mean, there's lights and darks and a little bit dirty too. I got to go over it. I have green markers too, so if I did have to do a little shave here and there for clearance, and I still might have to do that, but I'm going to take a little green Sharpie and just kind of fill them in. But even just lying flat like that, it looks pretty cool actually. So once it's all spiraled out, I think it's going to look even nicer. But let's get that star popped on. And then once everything's dry, we'll unspiral it and I'll show you what it looks like. And I got another little fun thing that I'm going to add to it that's going to make this the deluxe version. Now you may or may not have already guessed what it is. And if you're handy and if you've guessed it, good for you. If you haven't, well, you'll see it in the next shot here. All right, here it is, laying flat. I brought it upstairs because there's a little bit better lighting. So let's just set this guy up here. All right, and there you go. There's the spiral tree. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. Now for the really cool part. Because what I did was, I made a bunch of little bitty ornaments. And let me tell you, it took me a while just to tie the little thread after I obviously took time to find the thread. But now, with the little hooks that I made, in the deluxe version, I can go through and hook them around. Let's find a good spot to hook them to. And here you go, with a bunch of the ornaments, and they're just laser engraved, and then I hit them with a little bit of whatchamacallit, markers, and kind of randomly threw them around on the little hooks. And it actually turned out pretty neat. Now I may actually even go back and make a few more. But we'll see. I even got a special one. And yeah, there you go. So that is how you can make a tree, including the deluxe version of said tree. Now, if you don't want to make the deluxe version, you can make these by yourself as well. And I kind of showed you how to do them. Obviously, you would just put these cut straight, and you wouldn't need the little notching and all that good stuff. Again, the color looks really good. The base turned out really neat. It still is a slight, tiny bit dusty. I'm still in work clothes. Just kind of finished up this project. And yeah, there you go. Well, Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank you for watching. And we will see you on the next one.